All right, let's dive right into a book that has totally flipped the script on how millions of people think about money, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. The big idea here is that it challenges pretty much all the financial advice most of us grew up with, and it all kicks off with a really simple story. So, the author, Robert Kiyosaki, he tells his story through the eyes of his two dads. There was his actual father, the poor dad, who was super educated, a PhD, but he passed away with a pile of unpaid bills. And then there was his best friend's dad, the rich dad, who dropped out after the 8th grade but ended up as one of the wealthiest men in Hawaii. So, how did that happen? That's the million-dollar question, right?
And that's the key right there. This isn't really a story about two guys. It's about two totally different mindsets, two completely separate ways of thinking about money that led them down two very, very different paths.
What the book claims is that this financial mindset gets handed down, almost like it's in your DNA. Our parents, they mean well, they want the best for us, but they often pass along what he calls expired information, which is a great way to put it. It's financial advice that maybe worked for them, but just doesn't cut it in today's world, and it can trap families in a cycle.
I'm sure this sounds familiar. This is the path, right? You know the drill. Study hard, get that piece of paper, and then go find a safe, steady job with good benefits. That's the poor dad mindset, where job security is everything.
So how do you break out of that cycle?
Well, it all starts with one single, super important rule. I mean, this is the absolute foundation of everything Rich Dad taught.
Okay, first up, you've got to know what an asset is. And it's super simple. An asset is anything that puts money in your pocket. Period. End of story.
And on the flip side, you have a liability. That's anything that takes money out of your pocket. Now this sounds crazy obvious, but this is exactly where most of us get tripped up. So let's break this down with some real examples. Assets, things like stocks, rental properties, a business, they generate income for you. Liabilities, like your car, your phone, even your own home, they constantly take money out of your wallet. But here's the real kicker, the thing that separates the two mindsets. It's all about focus. The rich focus all their energy on building up that asset column. The poor and middle class, they tend to focus on their income, their paycheck, which they then immediately use to buy liabilities they think are assets.
Okay, so once you get that difference, it leads to this huge shift in how you see the world. You stop just working for your money, and you start making your money work for you.
I absolutely love this analogy. Just think about it like this. Every single dollar you have is like a tiny little employee. And your goal isn't just to work harder yourself, it's to get those little dollar employees working for you 24/7, making more dollar employees. That right there is the investor mindset. And this is such a perfect way to see the difference in action. When most people get a little extra cash, what happens? They're driven by either fear, I gotta pay the bills, or desire, ooh, a new shiny thing. They go out and buy the big screen TV. A person with a rich mindset, though, is guided by knowledge. They buy stock in the company that makes the TV. See the difference? One person bought a liability, the other bought an asset that creates more money.
The wealthy also get something most of us don't, how the game of taxes is played. See, most employees earn money, then they get taxed on it, and then they get to spend what's left. The rich often use legal setups, like a corporation. So the corporation earns the money, it spends money on all its expenses, and then it gets taxed on whatever is left over. It's a total reversal of the cash flow. And believe me, it makes a huge difference.
All right, so this brings us to another idea that kind of goes against everything we're taught. Especially when you're just starting out, the goal of your job shouldn't just be about the paycheck. It should be about the skills you're picking up along the way.
So Kiyosaki tells this great story about meeting a journalist. She was a phenomenal writer and dreamed of being a best-selling author. He told her, "Look, you're an amazing writer, but you need to learn how to sell." And she was genuinely offended. She said, "I have a master's degree. Why would I lower myself to be a salesperson?" She was literally one skill away from everything she wanted, but her pride was this giant wall in the way.
So these are the kinds of skills that really build wealth. Things like sales, communication, marketing, understanding accounting, leading people. You don't have to be a master of all of them, but you need to get how they work together to build a system. School drills into us that we have to specialize, become an expert in one tiny thing. But Rich Dad's advice, it was the total opposite. He said you want to be a generalist. Know a little about a lot. Understand a bit of accounting, a bit about investing, a bit about marketing. That's how you see the big picture and connect the dots that all the specialists miss.
Okay, let's get real for a second and talk about the biggest roadblock for almost everyone, fear. It's the fear of losing your money. And it's this idea that you have to sit around and wait for the perfect opportunity to just land in your lap.
Look, you don't have to be a genius to get rich. You just have to be willing to actually do something. The people who get ahead are the bold ones, the ones who create their own luck instead of just waiting around for something to happen. And failure? Let's reframe that. I mean, think about how a baby learns to walk. They fall down a lot, but they don't just give up and decide walking isn't for them. No, they get up, they adjust, they try again, and eventually they walk. Building wealth is the exact same process. See? Failure isn't the opposite of success, it's literally part of the process.
And that's really the heart of it. That fear of losing is so powerful, it just paralyzes most people. They're playing defense, they're playing not to lose instead of playing to win. And if you never take the risk of losing, you can never, ever win.
Okay, so if we boil all this down, what's the one thing, the number one takeaway you should focus on, starting right now?
It's this, right here. Your one and only focus should be building that asset column. All the nice things in life, the luxuries, the vacations, they come later. And here's the magic part. They get paid for by the money your assets make for you, not from you trading your time for a paycheck.
And that brings us to the final question. Because this isn't just some interesting idea to think about. It's about taking action. So the real question this all leaves you with is this. What asset are you going to focus on building first?